Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and happy Monday afternoon. My name is Jack Holder. I am the editor of the Great Commandment Anthology. Joining me is one of the most prolific writers and one of the most successful that I am honored to know, Jody Lynn Nye. She is here to talk about her contribution to the Great Commandment Anthology as well as why faith and talk about what it means to be a professional writer. We're going to be talking about the Great Commandment Anthology, comics in general, indie writing, and more tomfoolery. So let's jump right on into this. What is the Great Commandment? Who am I? Of course, you know who Jody is. But what is going on? Well, the Great Commandment is a comics anthology talking about something that we feel and experience each and every day. All the time, we have new commands, old commands, high and low, that invade and dominate every aspect of life. From the highbrow, love your neighbor as yourself, we the people in order to form a more perfect union, to the lowbrow, you have to clean the dishes, our in-laws are coming, actually pick up your clothes, to the seemingly just humorous, such as live long and prosper and be excellent to each other. But just as much as these commands are important and shape our lives, so too is our response of, yes, but what does that all mean? What does it mean to be excellent? What does it mean to prosper, to form a perfect union? Well, in the Great Commandment Anthology, we have answers. Not we have answers. Over 2 dozen comics featuring over 50 creators talking about what the world is like, what it could be like, and even what it should be like. From samurai Akitas defending their households to Taoist hippos talking about the suffering of life, extending all the way up to the very halls of Valhalla, to the atrocities being perpetrated at the southern US borders, all the way out into far-flung space. And speaking of far-flung space, we have on the bubble writer and creator Jody Lynn Nye here. Now, I cannot name all of Jody's writing credits and accomplishments because that would take me probably the full hour just to properly talk about it. She is a New York Times bestselling author and contributor to many anthologies. Jody, thank you so much for being with us. Can you just take a few minutes and talk about who you are and your comic On the Bubble?
Well, I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer. I've written short stories and novels and gazetteers to other people's worlds. I've written quite a bit of nonfiction, technical articles for a video magazine, game materials for Mayfair Games, and anything where I had the opportunity to try something new. And thanks to Jack, I have been able to write a couple of comic scripts, which is totally new for me and a great fun experience. Uh, when he said, "This is what the Great Command meant," that you're supposed to interpret a statement of some kind that is meaningful to you. Well, at first I thought Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. But I thought everybody surely will be doing that one. So I had to lean back a little bit and think, what has been meaningful to me in my life? There's so many different statements that are all really profound, but do they make good stories necessarily? When I was young, I went to a theater camp called Horan Camp of the Theater Arts in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, for several summers of my life. And at the end of the day, we would all gather around and we would sing "No Man Is an Island," and it's a beautiful song. But I thought that that would be a really interesting statement to write a story around. What does it mean when we say that? Well, generally, it means that you have someone that you can lean on, that you can be the person that someone depends on, but equally, you have people that you can depend on as well. So I had my young main character who is trying to his very best to be of great support to the Space Navy and falls into trouble himself.
Absolutely. And I don't want to dive too much into spoilers because this is one of those huge space epics taking place in just over 8 pages. All we can say is be careful who you lean on, be mindful of what you are doing, and of course, always think about what you eat. Uh,
And don't forget to ask for help.
and don't forget to ask for help. Thank you. I'm the guy. I should actually take that to heart more often. Now, as mentioned, Jody's this is her second comics anthology. I get to actually mention just two because she's in the other one for us with Why Faith. And so I want to talk about both of them because both are available on the Kickstarter. With the Fruits of Truth, we have a not at all relevant story talking about trusting science, trusting scientists. Can you talk a little bit about the Fruits of Truth as well?
Well, it's not only trusting science, but trusting in the people who practice science and go through a scientific method to prove something is safe or not safe. In this case, my character, Dr. Wilma, is part of a party that crash lands on a planet. They have only so much in the way of supplies because their journey, of course, was not meant to be interrupted. They were meant to get to their destination. But they fell into technical difficulties and had to land. So they were fortunate enough to come across a planet that had atmosphere and gravity that they could survive in. But could any of the plants that were growing there be safe enough to eat? Would they have too much in the way of alkali? Would they be outright poisonous? Would they simply make you feel sick, even though they have a lot of nutrients, and so on? So she is the one who takes charge of investigating the plants and saying, here are the things that are safe. These are only safe after they're ripe. These are never safe at all. So it's not that people necessarily disbelieve her right away, but just the way that, say, fly agaric mushrooms look really pretty with their red bodies and their white spots, they look like they would be very delicious, but they're actually toxic. So instead of following your own instincts, you have to go against them and say, has anyone tried these things? Has anyone analyzed them? We have the facility to do that. We don't have to necessarily eat something ourselves to find out if it's safe. In the same way that the legend is that goat herders in Africa watched goats eating from a certain uh, plant, and they got very lively after eating these beans, and that turned out to be coffee. So they said, if they get energy from this thing, why don't we try this? But contrariwise, there are berries that birds eat that humans cannot eat. They're toxic, and people who try them, they probably had, erg, go over there, try that. Erg tried it, fell down and died, and they said, oh, okay, we won't eat those. But in this case, we have better methods, and the people who believe Dr. Wilma versus the people who don't are going to be the ones who get sick versus the ones who don't get sick.
Precisely. So I loved working with you, Jody, because what uh, both Why Faith and the Great Commandment. I come from a very religious background, and I think a lot of people knew that, so they were like, let's talk about religion, let's talk about interpreting those types of commands and those types of beliefs. You decided to talk about both concrete fact and faith, not in the abstract of deity, but in people. Can you describe that that process and how you find meaning in that?
Here's one of the concerns with why faith as talking about a specific religion is that for people who are perhaps uncomfortable with their own faith, they may not feel comfortable reading about another faith. And people who are secure in what they believe in, or who are questing for something that they would find comfort in. I wrote about a purely secular matter, but it has an analog in religion as well, because you don't see God right away, you see people. And if somebody says to you, this truth is eternal, this is something that happens to be true, you can either go out and try to prove it to yourself, or you can believe the person that is saying it to you. Does that person have credibility? Does that person have something that makes you believe them, that makes you understand that they have seen into this more deeply than you have? And do you believe them? Perhaps. Many people would, if they're looking for something, if they're looking for a truth. In the case of my characters who are with Dr. Wilma, they're looking for literally saving their own lives. So saving your soul, saving your life, it depends on having credence, having faith in what somebody is telling you, and whether you believe them enough that you can live by that.
That is wonderful, and I think something that needs to be said more often. Uh, Going on right now, I think we have the response of uh, I'm I'm going to verify everything. I'm going to Google everything, and if Snopes comes back with yes, that was a truth, or there is a proper citation in Wikipedia. But we don't really get that opportunity with A, some higher truths, and B, some really complex earthly truths. You don't simply question the doctor who says you have cancer. You may get a second opinion, but it's trying to also find someone wonderfully learned and not just going on WebMD. Uh, so you've been part of two anthologies with me now, but I think what people really know you for is your prose work and your prose anthologies. Uh, can you describe that? Because we, on the channel, we also have a lot of fledgling creators, fledgling writers who are just starting to dip their feet into, okay, what can I do to really get my writing started? And anthologies seem to be a really great way to start. Can you talk about the process and some tips?
Actually, I do think that short stories are a great way to get started because they teach you to create a piece of prose that has a beginning, middle, and ending, that has characters that people will relate to and want to follow throughout. And one of the things that I tell my students all the time is you don't have to like the main character, but you must be compelled to follow their adventure and whether they succeed or fail. So for the writer to think about this is, what am I giving the reader? What reward am I providing to the reader so that they want to follow the journey to the end and that they'll be pleased with it when they finish? And short stories are good for stretching your wings. It used to be that they would tell people, no, start out writing short stories and then someday you'll be able to write novels. Well, they are two very different things. A short story has one arc of a problem arises, a solution is found or not found. And when you are writing a novel, there's a complicated arc that has been described in several people's work, including, say, Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. The beginning comes, a problem arises. Generally, the person who is called upon to solve the problem refuses the quest at first, and so on. All of these steps that go into telling a complex story and resolving it at the end in a satisfactory manner, introducing side plots and subplots, all of which need to be resolved at the end of the story. Everything needs to be tied together. So a novel, a short story is novel junior, but it is not the same thing as, we were discussing this a little earlier, it's not the same thing as a chapter in a novel, because by the time you get to chapter 37, you don't have to repeat facts that came in the beginning, but you do need to keep piling tension on the main character and providing more and more obstacles in the way. So I do suggest seeing if you want to try something to get published, get something in front of an editor. And that means sitting down and finishing it. So that is the hardest thing for people to do, is actually getting it done. But once you have finished something, polish it up as best you can, show it to a trusted friend who will go through it and say, okay, this doesn't make sense, or whatever happened to the dog? Polish it up and send it out. There are lots of opportunities. You can find groups on Facebook that have short story opportunities. The Science Fiction Writers of America, Horror Writers of America all have market reports with open anthologies. You can search for those, send it in, and while you're waiting for a response from that editor, write something else. And the only way to create a career is actually to do the work. You can't talk them into being. I have a couple of people I know that have talked their novels for years and have never actually produced one. So write words, lots of them, polish them up, send them out, write something else.
Wonderful. And this is something that I, as an indie writer, had struggled with for years. It's only been the last year that I've actually buckled up and actually pushed out my own fantasy series. And some of that is looking at Jody's prolific work and going, if I actually want to say I'm a writer, I actually need to not just write something, but you actually need to be able to get it out. Right now, we also have a wonderful opportunity. We have the artist, Nicolas Touris, is here to talk about his own contributions to the anthology. Nick? Are you there? All right, I think we are experiencing some technical difficulties. So we will be getting back to Nick very shortly. Jody, asking more questions here. When you talk about editor, I think a lot of writers, when they start out on their journey, some of the things they're also thinking about flat out is the money question. Not how much am I going to make off of my first book, but very much is how much is it really going to cost me to get a good book produced and made?
Well, I can't really speak to that. I have not done the indie book yet, but there are a lot of good small presses out there that you can entrust your work to that are worth submitting to. And the good ones will absorb the expenses as part of the cost of doing business and provide you with, usually you won't get an advance, but you will get $1 royalties. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Can you afford to be writing but not earning anything? Can you afford to do that? You would do it in any case if you sent in short stories. You won't get paid in advance for them. You get paid when you sell it, and sometimes that is, if it's a magazine, on publication of the magazine, they will have sent the checks out immediately before that. With an anthology, you should get paid on receipt of the signed contract, but even that varies too. So sometimes writing is like an expensive hobby. You need to find another source of income in the meantime. So publishing a book, I am told that the Kindle system costs more every time you have Amazon do something for you. If you need it copy edited, Amazon will do that, but it will cost you part of your royalties. Have them design the cover for you, that'll cost part of your royalties. On the other hand, it takes the burden off of you so you can just go on writing. Is it worth it to you? I don't know. I have been lucky enough to work with editors so far at small publishing, large publishing houses who do the work for me. I want to do as much writing as I can. These days, though, writers also have to think about doing promotion, like, say, this interview right now. Uh, but it also gives us a chance to reach out, especially right now during the pandemic when this may be the only contact we have for a day or two. And it's nice to be able to talk with people who are of similar minds. I've also participated in Continual, Con That Never Ends, with some of the wonderful panel discussions. I think I've got one coming out in another week that I did, interviewed by John Hartness and Jean Marie Ward. Really good fun. So it doesn't have to be a grind, but it does have to be done. All of these things are your responsibility, just as every word you put on a page is your responsibility. You put it there, it's there on purpose.
And that is a wonderful response, because I think a lot of people have multiple responses when they say they want to write. They are like, I want to be able to write this book and publish it, like, and get an agent and get an author, author credits, and of course the next questions are not what it means to make it successful, but okay, how do I spend my movie money?
We all have that fantasy. That's fine. It's great to have fantasies and hope, but it's like the old saying, pray to God but swim towards shore. You still have to do the work, and you hope for the good things at the end of it.
Absolutely. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Uh, so we've talked on about the pandemic a little bit, and we did do that a little bit earlier before the broadcast. As this was the second anthology here, but you've done many different anthologies, probably both before the pandemic, and I think ours wasn't the only anthology that you were working on over the last 7, 8, 9 months. So can you describe how different the process is? Because we're almost getting to a new normal, and how things have changed.
I have done several in the months since the lockdown began, and at the very beginning, I still had the energy and the optimism, which I have to say faded after about 50 days. I was publishing a sort of I called it Rimo on my Facebook page, but it became a lot for me, and other friends who were creatives went down faster than I did. They said, "This is too much for me. I'm overwhelmed. I can't stand not being able to see my friends. I miss my relatives. I can't travel. I can't do anything." And yeah, it does affect you. It's like a pall that keeps you from feeling as if you're creative, feeling optimistic. But as you say, a new normal can arise, and you say, I am tired of not doing the things that I love to do. I want to create, I want to write something. So you buckle down, you sit in the chair, you glue your pants to the seat, and you put anything down. And before you know it, you probably are starting to create words here. Maybe they're not perfect, but it's like any habit. You have to keep pushing at it. You have to keep doing it until it starts to feel like it's natural again. And I've picked up I've picked up and started writing again, and it feels great. And I see that what I'm doing actually has some quality to it. The, I'm not sure that I could have done the same thing in July, but I'm doing it now, and I feel as if I'm coming back to it. Still miss my friends, still annoyed that I can't go up and see my family, still annoyed that we can't travel, but I'm going to make this work. And that's all we can do. Humans, I think, are naturally optimistic. I really do. I think that people say, oh, well, it, it, it may be bad, it could be worse. And I think that's true, truth. So I'm just acting as if that's the case.
I completely agree. I was talking with my wife and over the weekend, and we came to the realization that I hadn't actually really been working on a real book project in almost a year. And she's like, "Well, this is pretty easy to understand because you started Great Commandment, and then the pandemic happened. Luckily, comics projects have been going on. What really helped was being able just to see amazing artwork and prose that was coming out at the exact same time. That is one of the reasons I love uh, putting out these anthologies, is seeing everyone else do their collaborative projects as well. It is super inspiring. Uh,
I found this a lot of fun. It's the interactive quality of working on a graphic novel, a comic story, is seeing the vision that the artist picks up from it. That my words meant something to somebody who has to produce an image to go with it. And naturally, have not really had that before. So I can see why people love writing comics, is they get to see what their work looks like. Short of a movie, this is the next best thing.
uh, there will be a lot of comics artists who will respond, "Hey, actually, it's better because you don't have to worry about the sequences, and you can hear your characters just the way you would like to." Uh, because this was very different for you, what was it? What was it like twice over writing comic scripts? I know that for you, because I was your editor, you got to send them to me. Uh, what, what was the process for you? Because you had to find a way to present it in a way for Nick to turn it into something that was close to your vision.
I was a film student in college, so I have been writing scripts for a long time. And this is another form of script writing. So I would be creating each scene as an individual shot. So I had some suggestions for Nick of who was in the shot at the time that the words were being spoken, and then left most of the expressions and things up to him, and especially the form of the characters and the color palette, which, by the way, I thought was great. And giving him the opportunity, this, again, the collaborative work, just like filmmaking, to take what I had written and adapt it in a way that he would make it so it was coherent and exciting and that it would move. I think once I get to be more sophisticated at it, I would be better at creating pages that you have when you turn to the next, before you turn to the next page, there would be a cliffhanger image or statement, and then you would turn to the next page, and there would be the payoff for that. I'm not there yet. I need a lot more practice, but at least I can see that the possibilities of it. The other thing that I had to do was create a story that was a little bit more simplistic than I wanted to, because I could only tell it in brief blurbs of dialogue. But that was different. That was something that I had to buckle down on. There is not going to be a lot of internal thought, very little, if any, and I had to make it so that it was simple enough to be drawn. But you can get really sophisticated with the artwork as well. If you are fortunate enough to have a good artist, they pick up on these subtleties.
Right. There are so many wonderful schools of thought when you delve into the world of comics. Like, you'll have sort of like the 80s, you'll have giant text boxes that will harken back to Conan the Barbarian. And in the year 366 AD, the Normans taking the field of battle. But then you'll get to what Jody is referencing, going, no, actually, you don't need that, and you can be hindered by putting too many words on the page, because then you can't see the artwork that you went out and got this amazing artist with. It is one of those wonderfully challenging mediums. Writing has extremely different challenges. Earlier this afternoon, I was speaking with the writer Travis Gibb, and he was like, I can't do prose. I cannot write the description properly. Setting works really hard for me. But I can do comic scripts. And it's like, the fact that, Jody, you're like, all right, I've done film, and I've done comics, and I've done short stories, and I've done full novels and novellas. Have you done poetry?
A little bit.
Okay, what haven't you done?
Oh boy, I have never written a romance novel. One of my late friend Susan Sizemore was wonderful at that. Maybe I'm too cynical. I haven't written a children's book yet. I have written young adult, but I haven't written a children's book yet. There are many more hills to conquer, really. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
Wonderful. And this means I need to make a children's book anthology next.
Yeah.
The amount of ideas just keep falling into place. So we have now come to what I call the QVC portion of the anthology, because we are here, we have an opportunity to talk with you. It is, in fact, about this wonderful comics anthology that Jody is a part of, called The Great Commandment, if you jumped on a little later. And it is on Kickstarter right now. We are currently at 66 backers with over $2,700 raised. Exactly. You want to click that link. It is in the comments. Something you definitely want to check out, because you can get On the Bubble in the Great Commandment anthology. You want her earlier story, The Fruits of Truth? We have Why Faith, that it is right here, and you can actually get it in the Kickstarter as well. These are the kinds of rewards that you can get. There are canvas prints from many of our artists. There is poetry from some of our writers. Many things that you would absolutely want to get your hands on. We have just over 3 weeks left to go. So here's the weird hypocrisy that I do every single interview, Jody. This anthology is about personal interpretation. It is about taking external factors and putting your own personal spin on that. And we wouldn't want to take that away from you, the audience and reader. But we have Jody right here. For On the Bubble, what do you want others to take from this particular piece, from your comics, maybe even from this particular year?
I want people to investigate everyone's interpretation of what Jack meant by the Great Command meant. And by the way, I thought that was a kind of clever pun when you came up with it. But you have a way of creating a theme for us that is deeper than most themes go. I've written stories about cats and spaceships and revenge and all manner of things, but hardly ever do the anthologies I've written for get philosophical. So this is a chance for people to explore something in a completely different way than they would normally do. So I think that you will find it to be fun, but thought-provoking as well.
Wonderful. That does it for me. Is there anything more that you would like to add, Jody?
Well, I am looking forward to reading this anthology myself because of what I have seen, the images and the sample pages, which, by the way, are on the Kickstarter page for The Great Commandment. I think that other people should explore them, take a look at it, and then participate. Jump in if you just want to put in a donation. I believe that that's possible, but I think that you would enjoy having the anthology yourself. And it's beautifully produced, just like the first one. If you want to show them a page of Why Faith, I think that they will find that.
I definitely. There we go. We have wonderful pages right here from a certain writer.
I wonder who. And of course, my artist. Every artist is different. Every writer is different, and Jack has put them together, I think, in the right order. Sometimes I've seen art from artists that didn't really suit the piece that they were attached to, but I think Jack did a really good job of matching us.
For those who don't know this, and I think that's actually most people, I met Jody, it's got to be, 2-3 years ago in Philadelphia for the Great Philadelphia Comic-Con. My wife and I were like, oh my God, Jody Lynn Nye is going to be there. And Jack, you're doing the Why Faith anthology pretty soon, and you really want to get a hold of her. And I'm like, there is no way Jody's going to say yes to this. And we ended up, I remember that Sunday being completely dead. Like everyone was just dead on their feet. They knew they had long rides. I think we all were thinking about packing up, but Jody and I ended up staying around for like an extra hour because she got to talk about so many nerdy sci-fi stuff with my wife. And
that was a lot of fun.
And it was so much fun. And so we talked later, and you're like, okay, I want to do this, but I have no clue about finding an artist. And I knew Nick Touris personally, shot him an email, and his response is, there is no way she's going to want to work with me. Everyone, you hear the New York Times bestselling author, and everyone immediately goes, there's no way Jody Lynn Nye wants to work with us plebes. To which your response is, please, let's actually work together. And it was so much fun both times. And for me as editor, I got to have a hand in most everything from, not everything from script to art, but enough that it was such a memorable experience to be able to just see everything come to life.
I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to try something new and to hold my hand through the process, because certainly I had no idea how to put together a comic script at that time. And I have still a more rudimentary understanding than I wish I did. But thank you for the opportunity. It was great fun.
And thank you for being a part of it. That does it for us today. The anthology, once again, is The Great Commandment. You can check that out on Kickstarter right now, or you can see so many posts from all the amazing creators. Tomorrow, I'm going from New York Times bestselling author to USA Today bestselling author with Russell Nolte and the inimitable, completely charming Angela Odling, who is both an artist, and she's the cover artist for both Why Faith and The Great Commandment. I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much for watching. Please share this video. Please ask any questions further on. We will try to answer them at a later date. Have a wonderful rest of your day and the rest of your week. From me, God bless, and from all of us, thank you so much for watching. Take care.